welcome to the show. It is so awesome to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
We have so much to talk about, not the least of which is the Big Gay Fiction Book Club selection for this month, but we'll get to Throwing Hearts a little later. I want to kick off with what you released earlier this month, which is Bossy.
Yes.
Tell
Bossy.
us all about Michael and Bryson.
Okay, they are a fun couple. It started out as a friends with benefits, a casual encounter, no names, no details, no complications, which of course we all know how that generally ends, usually very complicated. So it was a fun story. They were good characters to write. Yeah, I just enjoyed doing the less heavier, more fun romance then so no, it was just good to do something without a great deal of research and a great deal of without getting bogged down into details. It was just fun,
and fun is good these days. We all need a little lightness.
I think we do. and not only to read but also to write. The world is so crazy right now, and it's really quite, I don't want to say depressing, but it's quite, everything's kind of closed off right now. So it's just good to read and write something that doesn't draw you down or bog you down too much.
I really like a line that you've got in the blurb. It's actually the last line in the blurb that to me just sets up the whole story. Michael and Brian need to decide just how complicated they want to get.
Yes. They do need to decide exactly how complicated things need to get, or how complicated they want things to get. So, yeah, it was good. They know nothing about each other. They don't even know names. They don't even learn their first names until about maybe halfway through the book. So, yes. But by then, they are quite enamored with each other, and, it was just fun. It was a bit of a leap from reality, really. It does get complicated when their professional lives collide. Yes, and they find out names and histories and everything all in one go.
I always love those stories where, and in this case, they were together for a little bit before this happened, but that I've had this hookup, I've had this connection, but I left it to the side, and then boom, they're in my workplace.
Yeah. Yes, literally that's what happens. He walks in and he's meeting a client that's not his client. The person who was supposed to be meeting him was stuck in traffic. So he's walked in and it's, I know you kind of situation.
And not just a little bit.
Yeah. So no, it was good. It was a lot of fun to write. They were good characters.
What were your inspiration for these two, for Michael and for Bryson?
I don't know. A lot of people always ask me about inspiration, and I always find it a little bit difficult. I don't know. I always just get characters that speak to me, or that just kind of form in my head. And Michael spoke to me first, and I just always pictured this blonde, very sleek, very polished character. And he wasn't cold, but he was just very, no, I don't have time for anything complicated. And then there was Bryson, who was laid back. He wears the shirts with the vintage band shirts and the expensive boots. He's the one with all the money. I don't know. The characters come to me first. It's not really any inspiration for them. Just the voice that started to speak to me. Michael spoke to me first.
Mm-hmm. In that situation, do you have to wait for Michael's companion to come along, or do they usually come along in pairs as you discover these characters?
Sometimes, and this is probably going to sound funny. If they come to me, if they come to me in pairs, like you suggest, it's generally going to be a dual point of view. If they come to me and it's just one, it's normally just a single point of view. Yeah. So it's funny that you say that, but that's generally how they come to me.
I like that makes a lot of sense, that you would do dual point of view in those instances.
And I've never thought about it like that, but that is generally what happens. It's a dual point of view if they both talk, but generally, yeah, I think a lot of my earlier books was just a single point of view, but then other characters would come in and I would write them through the main character's eyes, of course. But then sometimes the second main character is just as chatty, so he will get his own point of view. Yeah.
Do you have a preference over single or double as you go, or is
No.
it truly just how the story plays out?
I don't really get a say in it, to be honest, which sounds really weird, but I don't really have a say. What I struggle the most with is probably first person to third person. Most of my stories are first person, but there have been some which are third person because I know that there will be scenes or aspects of the story that has to be told from an outside point of view, like from a perspective not from the main characters. So I've done a few that are third person perspective, but generally it's more first person that I write. So some I've actually started to write in first person and I get no more than half of the first chapter before I realize that it's wrong and it needed to be in third person because I knew something later was going to happen that he couldn't. It was going to happen to him, probably, so we couldn't see it from his point of view, if that makes sense.
It does. And at least you figured it out early. I've had books where I'm like a third of the way in and realize I need that point of view change, and then that's just hurtful at that point.
Oh, yeah. It is hurtful.
It sounds like you're very much a discovery writer, pantsing your way along. Do you usually have an endpoint in mind early on in the book that you're headed towards?
That's the only thing that I have. I generally have the final scene or what I call the destination, and then I start at chapter 1 and start writing. I have a few points, what I would call like milestones or plot points that I know need to happen, but I don't plan anything else. I don't outline. I don't do anything like that, but I know the destination. How they get there is what they tell me as I'm writing.
It's good that you start with the destination. I've done the ones where I don't know where they're going. I've got an idea of a plot and the characters. Usually I get there. Sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
Like, where are you going?
I know. And I have written a crime thriller. It's called Tallerwood. Anyway, because I am a pantser and I do not outline or plot, I realize that that's really rather difficult to write crime mystery thrillers without having the intricate details outlined. So yes, it isn't always a good thing, I guess, but I've never been able to outline or plan or anything. I know where I need to end up or where the characters, I know the final scenes. And sometimes I will actually write that first. I will just a few, mostly just a conversation or just the end destination, a few lines, but then I always go back to chapter 1 and just start.
And I know other mystery writers and thriller writers who go the pantsing route, and then they talk about having a lot to clean up in the edit because then you've got to make sure that mystery holds together. Yes,
all of these thread points that you need to pull together to make the whole fabric come together. Oh, it was... Yeah, it was rather difficult. And it kind of broke my brain for a while afterwards, I think. I needed to just write something that was just completely carefree and fun after that.
Which, of course, makes a lot of sense. You think you'll ever go back to that genre and give it another go? Or?
Oh, I love it. I love reading it, and I loved writing it. But, it's a lot. It's a lot, and I honestly take my hat off to people who write it consistently, and particularly if they don't do outlines. For sure, it was a tough one.
I was noticing your covers, and you talking about Bossy just now made me think of this, because you talk about how Michael is very slick and presents in just the right way. And I see that here so much with the cover too. It gives that vibe. Yeah. And then I look at something else like Throwing Hearts, and then there again, you've really hit the vibe of the Pottery Studio and the more easygoing nature of that book.
Yeah.
You must must put a lot of work into these covers to hit that, because they don't all necessarily say this is an N.R. Walker book, but it really conveys the essence of the story in some ways.
Yeah, and look, honestly, sometimes I will have a cover for a long time before I write the book. So it allows me to really integrate that image into the story. So with the cover of Throwing Hearts, I had that image. And so it allowed me really to write Merrick into the book from the cover. And same with the Bossy cover. I found that, and so he was just that sleek, well presented, kind of carefree. I don't know really quite how to explain that very well, but so I had the cover before I started to write the book, and I do with a lot of mine. For me, I don't know, cements how the story is told, I guess. I take a fair bit of inspiration maybe from the covers that I do. I make a lot of my own covers. I have some help, but a lot of them that I actually just make myself, like the Throwing Hearts cover, I did that one. Very basic, but fun, and yeah, portrayed what the story was going to be. I hope that the covers show the reader pretty much what the book is going to be like before they read the blurb or before they get to page 1.
Yeah, there's a lot of tone conveyed in the covers, at least for me, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you buy the images first before the characters talk to you, and then maybe that helps the characters, or characters and then cover? Or?
Sometimes, if I'm one of my worst procrastination tools is searching for cover images or looking at pre-made cover sites. If I just need to not write for a little bit, or if I just need to spend 2 hours doing something completely mind-numbing, I will just scroll the internet and look for cover images or pre-made cover sites and that type of thing. Yeah. And sometimes I bought a cover that will literally sit on my computer for 2 or 3 years because I've seen the cover and I just think, oh my God, I love it. And then they will start to talk to me however long later. So that actually happened with the Imago cover. The very first Imago book was the orange butterfly as the bow tie. And I found that as a pre-made cover. She does a lot of covers. It's Lou Harper. And I found it, and I just had to have it. I loved it. And I had no idea for a story. I had nothing. And then about 2 years later, I was actually on a plane in America, I think, and I was just writing down a few plot points or whatever, and an idea came to me about a butterfly. And I thought, oh, I've got a cover for that. And so that's how that came to me. So I had the cover for a long time. I don't know whether something in the back of my mind just ticks over, or I'm not sure. But yeah, so the covers, I tend to have a lot of my covers long before I write the book, which allows me to kind of get the tone right.
It would be interesting to do a survey of authors, how many covers we all have sitting around waiting between
100.
either pre-mades or
100.
single images that we've bought. Because I know we've got easily like 20 covers sitting around waiting for an inspiration to hit because they look so good.
Yeah. I literally would probably have hundreds, and I've spent a fortune. But one day I'll probably get to them. But then I tend to, sometimes I make my own, or I will have a general idea of what I want and I will put together a mock cover, but I just can't get it quite right. So then I will send it to a cover artist and say, this is what I'm thinking, but I can't nail it, and they make it pretty. Yeah.
Now you mentioned Imago.
Yes.
And you actually came back to that series for the first time since 2017.
I did.
With a short you released earlier this year. What brought you back?
Oh, it was funny. There was a big promotional thing that was going on for the winter Wonderland thing, and my friend was going in it, and I thought, oh, maybe I should do that too. And I said, but I've got no idea what I would write about. We're in the middle of summer. So she said something about, oh, maybe you should revisit a character or whatever. And I, again, with the butterflies, I was like, oh, well, a winter butterfly, there's really no such thing as a winter butterfly. They they tend to hibernate, or they're not too common. So I wondered how that would work. But anyway, long story short, it didn't really apply to the promotion that was, to the guidelines or whatever. And that was my fault. I didn't read them properly. So,
Such a
so
rule
I
breaker you
thought,
are.
I know, and I thought, oh, well, anyway, so that was completely my fault. But I just thought, what can I do with it? I'll just release it for 99 cents and put it out in the world. And yeah, so it just kind of came to me really. And it was a fleeting conversation with a friend of mine who just happened to mention something about, oh, is there like a winter butterfly or something? And then that was it. It just kind of sparked, and I went, oh, that would be interesting. And yeah, so that's how that came about.
And for people who may not know that series, because it is one of the older ones, tell us a little bit about Imago.
Jack and Lawson, they live in Tasmania, which is right down south of Australia. It's a little island off the south of Australia, and it's quite cold down there generally. And anyway, one is a butterfly specialist, and so Lawson, he's very smart. Sometimes he's too smart for his own good. And then there's Jack, who is like a park ranger, and that is how they meet. Lawson is out on a field expedition to find a butterfly that it's not supposed to exist. So, and Jack goes with him. Yeah. So, yeah, lovely story to write. Just another one of those decent guys doing ordinary things, and yeah, nice guys.
Yeah. And I imagine a good amount of butterfly research, perhaps.
Oh, yes. I actually went into writing that thinking, oh, I need to write a story with minimal research. Um, and then literally 2 hours later, I think I was researching soil acidity for ants or something. I was it's like, okay. So always research, always, no matter what book I write, I have to research something.
How do you fit that into the pantsing style that you've got? Do you leave yourself blanks to fill in later, or do you pause to get the research?
Yeah, sometimes I will leave a section in the manuscript that this needs some research, but generally I will just start searching things on the internet, and 4 hours later I have sections of information that sometimes don't even end up in the manuscript. Sometimes it's more for the character, to understand the character, I guess, as to why they do what they do. If a butterfly specialist is going to be talking to someone about his field of expertise, then I need to know, to make him more three-dimensional, there has to be some depth to why he does what he does. So there's a lot of the research that doesn't end up on paper, but hopefully it shows through the character in as a whole, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, a lot of research usually.
So you mentioned nice guys doing nice things, and that's
Yes.
a great segue over to Throwing Hearts. Like I mentioned, that's our book club pick for March. This book delighted Will and I so much. Oh my goodness. You mentioned a little bit that Merrick kind of got more fully formed because of that cover. What
Yes.
can you tell us about where Leo and Merrick sprang from for you?
Well, I don't know. I'd been watching the Pottery Throwdown. That there's a show called Pottery Throwdown. and I love that. But there's a lot of pottery making on Instagram and Twitter and all of, social media, and just watching them, it's just such a physical, I guess, sensual art form. It's very tactile and it's very hands-on. So yeah, I don't know. There was no like moment. It was just, oh, that would be fun. And it was actually Leo that spoke to me first, and he was just bright and bubbly and looking for something, but didn't really know what he was looking for. And of course, he was helping Clyde through the outreach program of older gay men, with trying to keep them involved. There is actually a program like that in Sydney. So I did kind of use that as a foundation of how we would meet Leo in particular and Clyde. Yeah, and then we met Merrick through his art studio.
And they're such a lovely couple. I mean, they talk a lot, and I love characters that talk and put their feelings on the table and everything. And yeah, the pottery stuff, it just all wove together in such a nice tapestry of good feels all the way around. And I love that it was Pottery Throwdown that gave you the inspiration, because Pottery Throwdown is why we wanted to read that book.
Yes, yeah. So because I think the new season's just started, hasn't it? I haven't caught up on that yet. But
It's not over here yet at all. We keep seeing Facebook stuff from the
oh,
UK
really?
about season
Yeah.
4. And it's
Yes.
like, hurry up and get it over here.
I do love that, and I do love that it's very, yeah, it's a very tactile, personal thing. I mean, all art is, I guess, but yes, seeing them do that it was just a lot of fun. And yeah, again, with the decent guys, nice characters who deserve good things.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't always have to be about angst and drama, and sometimes it can just be fun, and that's still valid storytelling. It's still books, and romance novels don't need to have heartbreak to be a valid romance story, or sometimes there's the conflict that has to happen. It's not defining as so much, it's more building, I guess. And yeah, so with characters like Leo and Merrick, it was just good to give them a happy ever after that was, yeah, good. And I think more so with them, the conflict, or the what happened to make them become closer together, really was Clyde and Donnie, and seeing their conflict and their inner struggle, kind of. But then knowing that Clyde and Donnie were kind of seeing each other, it also made Leo and Merrick realize that it doesn't need to be complicated. Sometimes things can just be good and easy, and it's only as complicated as you make it, really.
Some of their complications, I really enjoyed watching them sort out, because most of their conflict was centered around consent a lot of times, and what one wanted versus the other, and going slow. And I really liked how you worked with consent here, because it is such an important factor how fast each wants to go. And the way it was laid out, I thought was really unique for romance, to see so much talk of consent. I really thought it was kind of refreshing up in and amongst this really light book.
Yeah, yeah, and saying what you want, but also what you need, and what is good for you as a person, and not what trying to please the other person because you don't want them to leave you type thing. I think that's knowing what you want and what you're worth is an important thing to put down on the table when you're with someone who you think could be the real deal for you. So yeah, so that was good.
And then of course, Clyde and Donnie. You gave us 2 romances for the price of 1 in here for the most part.
Yes, I know.
And Clyde and Donnie, I mean, we don't see those stories a lot. They're both in late 60s, early 70s for both of them. Donnie has been very closeted his entire life, and Clyde draws him out. It was just the most beautiful thing. Where did those 2 come from? I think we said Clyde spoke to you first, kind of in that situation.
Yes. Clyde was always there. He was with Leo from the very beginning, and he was just this grumpy, gruff, cranky old man who was just the biggest, softest bear that Leo just adored, and his gruffness was part of his charm. So getting him out of the house, even though he complained and grumbled the entire time, was Leo just adores him. So Clyde was always there. I had no idea that Donnie was going to be in the book or that Donnie even existed until we walked into the art studio, and there he was. And Clyde was just literally speechless when he first saw him. And I just thought that was lovely. And it was good to while Leo and Merrick were over here having their do we, don't we, how do we make this work? Clyde and Donnie were just like, you know what, life's too short. So it was good to have that two contrasting perspectives, I guess. That, yeah, Clyde and Donnie were I just loved them.
And it also kind of kicked Leo and Merrick along to see that life's too short kind of thing.
Yeah.
And to know that Donnie lost a lot of his life being closeted. So
Yeah.
they might as well go for it. It was such a good message all around, just to add to that feel good value of the book again.
Yes. Yeah. No, it was good. And so, yeah, they completely took me by surprise,
I'm so glad they did.
Clyde and Donnie. I had no idea when I started that they would be a secondary romance in the book. So, and it was good. And the end scene, I don't know whether I should give spoilers.
Well, we'll be spoiling it in the book club episode, so you can either spoil it now or we'll spoil it then.
But to set up that wedding scene, I really wanted to have them being at the church and being really nervous, but it wasn't Leo and Merrick's wedding. So to me, that was, yeah, I loved that part as well.
I was delighted to see that wedding that happened as opposed to Leo and Merrick's.
Yes.
It was just all the more satisfying.
It was for me
end of the day, for me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really hope Clyde and Donnie infiltrate your brain again, because I would love at some point to see almost their timeline of the same story, to know some of the other stuff that was going on. We get some really awesome peeks inside Throwing Hearts, but to see more of that for them. So I have a little campaign here that I want them to talk more to you.
Well, if they start to talk, I will definitely listen. But yeah, they never spoke to me like main characters. So
fingers crossed.
Yes, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
So let's go back in your history a little bit. What got you started writing?
Oh, fan fiction. I started reading fan fiction about 12 years ago, and it was Twilight fan fiction. And there were scenes in the books that I didn't really like or agree with, or that I thought were missing, and I actually started to write. I actually wrote one short, it was about 10,000 words, before I even knew what fan fiction was. And I'd never written anything before outside of high school. And I just wanted to write this scene because it wasn't in the books and I wanted to see it, I guess. So I wrote that, and then I found fan fiction and I read hundreds of thousands of words, millions of words I probably read in about 2 years. And then I remembered this little piece of writing that I had done, and I thought, oh, I could upload that. So without knowing what I was doing, or no one had read it, no one had edited it, no one had even looked at it, but stupid me uploaded it into this fan fiction site, and a lot of people read it and a lot of people really liked it. And so then I wrote some more, and I just kept writing. And then a lot of people kept saying to me, you should write original fiction. But it never really occurred to me I was happy doing what I was doing, and it was fun, and I never wanted to write. But then I had two characters come into my head that had nothing to do with fan fiction, and I thought, oh. So that was actually the story Point of No Return. My breaking point story of Matt and Kira was the very first thing that I wrote. Yeah. So that was my first foray into writing original fiction of characters that didn't belong to somebody else. So, yeah, so I got into writing through fan fiction, really, by reading it to begin with.
That's awesome. Is your work still up there somewhere?
No, I took it all down.
Took it all down.
Oh, I'd be mortified if someone read that now. I'd be horrified.
What were the fandoms you wrote in?
I have written in Twilight. I have written in Spartacus, and that's about it. That's all that I've written in.
Okay.
Yeah. But I have read an awful lot. Yeah.
What drew you to writing romance and pairings?
Again, it was through fanfiction. Someone sent me a link. It was quite involved in the fanfiction fandom, I guess, for the want of a better word. And someone sent me a link to a story. It was called In the Deep End, I think. This is literally 12 years ago, saying, you need to read this. You absolutely have to read this. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I read it. And it was an pairing. And I literally never went back to reading MF fan fiction after that. It just was just a whole new concept for me. I don't know what drew me into it so much. I think it was more of an equal footing. The characters, I think, there's more of there's no damsel in distress, or there's no one really needed saving, I guess. But yeah, so that's how I got into Long before I started writing, I was reading pairings, yeah.
Who are some authors that inspire the kinds of stories you tell?
Oh, wow. I don't really know. I get inspiration from a lot of things, but I think what inspires me most from different authors is just authenticity, I guess. If there's a genuineness, I guess, to the story, or an originality, or something that's different, or something, that's what draws me and that's what inspires me. I don't want to say write from the heart, because everybody writes from the heart, but just that connection.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what inspires me the most. It's not really one or any authors in particular. I have quite a few favorites. I just think if it's just, yeah, something about a connection, I think that's what inspires me more, I think.
Mm-hmm. Do you have favorite themes or tropes that you tend to like to work with?
To read, I absolutely love sci-fi, paranormal, thrillers. That's what I would read all day long. Fantasy, oh, love it. But to write, I've written nearly kind of every genre or subgenre that you can probably imagine, and I do love writing fantasy. My Cronin's Key series and my book Lacuna are some of my proudest work. But again, because I don't plot or outline or anything, there's so much world building that needs to be done properly and thoroughly. And for someone who is a pantser like myself, that can get a little bit, it breaks my brain, is how I like to say it. So then I would generally spring back to something contemporary that is just fun, like Throwing Hearts, like Bossy, like Upside Down, things like that are just fun, contemporary, cute romance, good guys doing good things is generally what I come back to after I've written something heavier.
And I would say good guys doing good things is probably one of your trademarks.
Yeah, it probably is.
Do you have other ones in there too that you consistently just story after story put in?
I don't know. You'd probably have to ask my readers that. I know someone on Twitter not too long ago said, "Oh my God, it's an N.R. Walker book when they wear jeans with bare feet." I went, "Oh yes." Well, that's
an interesting trademark to have in there.
You do. And they swear a lot and they generally drink a lot of coffee. So that's just the author coming through there.
You mentioned that you've really written across so many genres.
Mm-hmm.
Is there one out there that you still want to do that you haven't taken the leap on yet?
I don't know. I have one sci-fi that I have written, but I have one that I would also like to write. And it is it's going to be in space on a different planet, or I don't really know. I haven't really got much further than that. But that is something that I would like to write, maybe later this year or even next year. But it's definitely going to happen. But that's kind of really about it. There are some that I just couldn't write because I don't know enough about. I think like a book about American football, I would have no clue. I barely understand Australian football, or even hockey, ice hockey. I love it, and I love watching it, and I love reading books about ice hockey, but I could never write it because I just don't. I didn't grow up in that, or I I just couldn't not research that authentically enough, I don't think. Particularly those two, because people who do know and understand and live that football, ice hockey, they would be able to spot me a mile off that I've never done that. Do you know what I mean?
I want to give you somehow a deep dive education on hockey because I would love to read an N.R. Walker hockey book.
I know, and I love ice hockey. I've seen 2 live ice hockey games when I was in America and love it. And I love reading ice hockey romance books, but oh, I just don't think I could do it justice.
Mm-hmm. What's something you've read recently that you would recommend to our listeners?
I'm halfway through Alice Winter's Hitman's Bodyguard.
Yeah, the Hitman series. Those are good.
The Hitman series. The second one, How to Survive Through Past Mistakes. Oh, sorry, Alice Winters. I can't remember the title. The second one. So I'm actually listening to them on audiobook. I prefer audios. I get more reading done, I guess, and it saves my eyesight and my hands. After I've looked at screens and typed all day long, audiobooks just give me a bit of a break.
Yeah, we feel the same way. We do a good portion of our reading on audio these days.
Yeah, and I love it. I just love it. So yes, the Alice Winters Hitman series, absolutely love it. I've got the third one ready to go. So I do love them. Jackson and Leland, the 2 main characters, and her sense of humor is just incredible. Love them. So another series that I've just not long finished reading is the Nevernight series by Jay Kristoff. It's a fantasy series, I should say, where just don't get too attached to a lot of the characters is probably the best way to say that. But it's amazing. And I read books like that are like Games of Thrones or the Nevernight series, and it just makes me feel like I'm sitting at the kiddies table half the time. Do you know what I mean? Because they are just so brilliant. But I just love them. So definitely the Jay Kristoff Nevernight trilogy. Yeah.
Awesome. With Bossy just out this month, what do we have to look forward to coming up in the months to come?
Okay, so my current work in progress, and I'm really quite behind on my schedule at the moment. So the next thing I'll have out after Bossy, it has a working title at the moment of Code Red, but I don't know whether that's going to stay. But generally what I save my document as I'm typing is just a working title, and it usually gets changed. But anyway, it is about he's in a band. So I don't want to say rock band because it's not really rock, and it's not really a boy band because he's 25. But anyway, he's a singer and a musician, and his manager, who has become pretty much the only person on the planet who he can trust. So that's what I'm writing at the moment. It's a lot of fun.
I see there's a musician involved and there's a workplace romance there because of the manager. Yeah, I think you can sign me up for it already.
They're traveling the world and because they're actually on tour at the moment. So, but yes, the wheels are about to fall off. I have no idea when that is likely to be released. I would have hoped for possibly May, but I think it may even be later than that because I'm just so far behind on my writing schedule at the moment. I think at the end of 2020, I know I've spoken to a lot of writers and other authors who have just hit a wall. The creativity and it's hard to be creative and to be productive with everything that's going on at the moment. Luckily enough, I could push through most of 2020, and I actually managed to write a fair bit, and I got a fair few books ahead, and then it came to about November and December and January, and I could barely write anything. So I'm a little bit behind, but I'm back into writing again. So hopefully these boys will, get their happy ever after, and everything will be right in the world.
I am sure that it will be. You'll get it there. It's important to take care of yourself so that you can get them there. So
yeah. It's just taking a lot longer than what I had hoped, but anyway, it'll get there.
So how can people keep up with you online to know when Code Red comes out, what its name might change to, and all the other news that'll come out from you?
So I have a Facebook readers group, which is where I am probably most active. And I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. I've avoided TikTok so far because I don't have the time that I know I will lose to that if I were to sign up. At the moment, I'm trying to not be as present on social media while I'm trying to get this book written, while still being active. It's quite a fine line to tread.
We'll link to all of that, plus the books and everything we talked about in our show notes. Anar, thank you so much for coming and talking.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.